Okay, this video is going to cover Module 4, Lesson 20 of the 5th grade Engage New York curriculum. And this is a tricky lesson because we're converting measurements, and that can be hard. So we're going to start with the example problem because I want to show you the steps that I've broken it down to for the kids. So the very first step is to take the problem 2 2/3 of a yard, and we're identify what you're trying to convert it to. And in this case, we're trying to convert it to feet. So the very first step in something like this is to take 2 2/3 and the yard and separate that out into the number of the unit. Okay, and we've gone through this several times in class, so hopefully by now that's pretty fluid. The next step, step 2, is to trade out the yard for the units that we're converting to, which is feet. And I know that in 1 yard, we have 3 feet. Usually over on the side, I've done a conversion factor, so I will write 1 yard equals 3 feet. Okay, and that will help me remember what I'm shifting over toward. The next step, step number 3, is to take my 2 2/3 and convert that into an improper fraction. So that becomes 8/3. If they've forgotten how to convert 2 2/3 or any mixed number into an improper fraction, the way I do it is I look first at the units. What is the denominator on the fraction? And those are thirds. And so what I will do is think about my 2 in terms of thirds. So 2 in terms of thirds is equivalent to 6/3 because 6/3 equals 2. And then I still have to add in my 2/3. So once I'm done converting, I will have 8/3. So 8/3 is equivalent to 2 2/3. So that's where this 8/3 is coming from. Step 4 is to do the actual multiplication. 8 times 3 equals 24. And the thirds, it would be like I was doing 3 times 1. So that remains 3. So after I multiply together, I have 24/3, and the unit is feet. Okay, so 24/3, when I simplify that, will be 8 feet, and that's my answer. So those are the steps that I want you to be thinking of. First, this one. Wait a minute. The first one is this one, where we're separating out the number from the units. Number from the units. The second one, second step, is then changing the units using the conversion factor. So from 1 yard to 3 feet, because those are equal. And then the third step is to go ahead and change the mixed number to an improper fraction. And then the fourth step is to multiply. And then you could also say that there's this fifth step of simplifying. Okay, so let's apply that to the next problem. If we go over to B, we see that we are going from feet to yards. Feet to yards. And so the first thing I want to do is understand my conversion. I usually put my conversion over in the corner just to keep it somewhere safe. And I know that right away 3 feet make up 1 yard, but I need to know how many yards are in 1 foot. So I can use my 3 feet equals 1 yard to determine that if I have that truth, then 1 foot equals 1/3 of a yard. So in this problem, they've already done step 1, where they're separating out the number and the units. They've done step 2, where they've traded out 1 foot for 1/3 of a yard. And they've done step 3, where they have taken 1 1/4 and converted it to 5/4, which is the improper fraction. Now all that is left is to multiply, which I will do. And when I multiply 5 times 1, I get 5 on the top. And when I multiply 4 times 3, I get 12 on the bottom for 5/12 of a yard. So let's move on to C, which is 3 5/6 feet equals how many inches? First, I'm going to put the conversion factor in the upper right-hand corner. I start off by putting the conversion factor up in the corner just to keep track of it. Then I'm going to take the original measurement and separate out the numbers from the units. And I will have 3 5/6 times 1 foot. The second thing I'm going to do is take that 1 foot and use the 12 inches in its place. So I'll replace 1 foot with 12 inches. The next thing I'm going to need to do is take this 3 5/6 and turn it into an improper fraction. To do that, I'm going to think of 3, the whole number 3, in terms of 6. So if I have 6 on the bottom, I'm going to have 18/6 to equal this 3. Okay? And then my 5/6 I will need to add in. So 18/6 plus 5/6 equals 23/6. And I'll put that over in place of my 3 5/6. Then I'll multiply that by 12 inches, and I'm going to call that 12 over 1 because I can. And this is where I start thinking about simplifying before multiplying. And in this case, I look at my 12 and my 6, and I see that they're related. Okay, so if I divide 6 divided by 6, that's going to equal 1. Okay, so I'll just write that down as 1. And if I divide 12 by 6, that equals 2. So I'm going to cross off the 12 and just write 2. Now I have 23 times 2, which equals 46, and 1 times 1, which equals 1. So my answer will be 46, and my units are now inches. I also want to look to see if that makes sense, so I will refer back to this 3 5/6 feet. I know that 1 foot is 12 inches, 3 feet is going to be about 36 inches, and so it's going to be more than 36 inches because I have another 5/6 of a foot, and it is. So it seems like a reasonable answer. And now I move on to the next problem. First of all, I know that 2 pints equals 1 quart, but I need to get it down to 1 pint, and so I shift that and convert it, and 1 pint I know is equal to half a quart. Now I can use that as my conversion factor. There's step 1. I replace pints with quarts for step 2. I change 7 1/2 to 15 halves for step 3. And then step 4, I'm going to multiply. And I end up with 15/4 for step 4. I want to simplify that. And once I simplify, I have 3 3/4 of a quart. I look back at the very beginning to see if that seems reasonable. That 7 1/2 pints would be 3 3/4 quarts. And I think it is reasonable, 3 3/4. Yay, I get to move on to the next problem. I start with 1 hour is equal to 60 minutes. Step 1, separate out the number and the units. Step 2, change out 1 hour for 60 minutes. Step 3, change this mixed number to an improper fraction. Step 4, I'm going to multiply, but I want to simplify first. So I divide the top and the bottom by 10 to get this new number. And once I multiply, 258 over 1, which is equal to 258 minutes. On we go to problem F. And since we're going from months to year, I know there are 12 months in 1 year, but I need to know how many years there are in 1 month. And there would be 1/12 of a year in 1 month. So I'll use that as my conversion factor. So step 1 is to separate the 33 from the unit, which is months. Step 2 is to replace that month with 1/12 of a year because we're trying to go from months to year. Step 3, there is no mixed number, so I just go straight to multiplying. And I get 33/12 of a year, but I need to turn that into a mixed number. And I end up with 2 9/12, which I can simplify to 2 3/4 of a year. How did I get from 33/12 to 2 9/12? I'll show you over on the side. Okay, so 33/12 is equal to 24/12 plus 9/12. And the reason I use 24/12 because that's equal to 2. And then I just add in the 9/12. So that's where I got the 2 9/12 that I started with before I simplified to 2 3/4. So here's the deal. I did the whole front of the homework for you, and you're going to have to be on your own for the back side. You can figure it out. I believe in you. Good job, you guys. This is the end of our recording. Good night.